college football and how it secretly wants to be European soccer. TikTok and YouTube are finding new ways to give creators money, and NBC trying to figure out if they can make money off the Olympics this year. All this and more coming up in maybe 30 minutes, maybe a little bit more here on the Podcaster Record. Hey everybody, welcome to the Podcaster Record. It is me, Matt. You've got Joe and Jack in the studio. We've also got producer Alex and producer Kirsten in here with us today. Welcome, everyone.
We're all very fortunate to be here.
We are all.
It's a full house.
Yep. We're also doing the first video episode. Well, not the first, but we haven't done video episodes
We haven't done
in
a long time. Yeah.
And not since the old studio.
COVID killed.
Yeah. So, welcome, everyone.
COVID killed the video work we were doing.
Yeah. So, welcome, everyone, to those of you tuning in. You can see the studio. We may have some new angles as the...
It's a nice studio.
Yeah, it's a nice studio.
What's the first story?
First story. What do you want to talk about first? You want to talk about college football?
Yeah, let's say college football, because I think that's going to be a big piece of the media landscape going forward.
So we're coming up, obviously, in just about a month or so on the college football season. And leading up to that, we've got some big moves, especially out of Texas. Jack, what are the two teams that are asking to leave? It's Texas and Oklahoma?
Texas and Oklahoma have officially asked to join the SEC as of today.
Well, let's explain why this is important. College football, the NCAA Division I, is divided up into these things called conferences. And conferences are groups of schools that are generally geographically clustered and generally
used to be geographically clustered.
Yeah. Now, there's been some spread. And originally, the idea of a conference was to limit the amount of travel an NCAA team needed to do to schedule its games. So you'd play maybe every team in your conference twice a year if you're an NCAA basketball team, or for football, I think the rotation's a little bit different.
Right.
But the conference was the focal point of the schedule, and it was largely to maintain these geographic rivalries, reduce travel time, make competing at a national level for a college just more efficient. What has happened over the last 30 years is college football broadcasting has become the driving force for big Division I schools.
Right.
The broadcast deals are worth billions of dollars.
Yep.
Those broadcast deals, with the exception of Notre Dame, which is an independent, are all negotiated through the conferences. The large conferences...
with the exception of one. The Longhorn Network.
Oh, the Longhorn. Interesting.
Yep. That's going to play a huge part in this, because Texas is willing to completely walk away from the Longhorn Network to join the SEC network.
Mm-hmm.
Longhorn Network has been hemorrhaging money since almost day one. I think they haven't made a dime off of it. It's popular, but they just haven't been able to actually.
I'm not sure I knew that existed.
It was the first. It predates the SEC network, ACC network.
Huh.
Yep. It was a very big deal, because the Big 12 wanted to do something, but Texas said, you know what? At the time, they were the highest grossing college football program, and they said, we're just going to do our own thing. And they, to their credit, they executed it quickly and decently. But it never got traction. It never caught on anywhere else. And then the SEC network fired up and completely blew it out of the water.
Interesting.
So the big thing, by the way, with conferences and what's happened over the last 20 years with conference realignment, so when schools switch conferences, the operating piece that's going on there is trying to have your conference have a foothold in as many major media markets as possible. And if not a foothold in a media market, then you want a top-tier blue-chip school that gets national attention no matter what media market it's in.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what is happening is the conferences, specifically the SEC, have realized that they don't need the NCAA. That
Correct.
The sanctioning of the NCAA, the academic requirements on athletes, all the restrictions on practice times, all of the things that the NCAA does under the guise of enforcing amateurism,
much more of a burden than a blessing.
have become like probably a net detraction from the ability of those schools to run what are essentially very large media brands.
Correct.
And the inequality of how they dole out those restrictions, those enforcements, they may punish San Jose State into the ground, giving it the death penalty. Alabama, for instance, could go do something very similar, but because Alabama is a huge player right now in these media markets and a huge grocer for ESPN and all these places that the NCAA needs to do well, they've been more lenient. They've turned the other way, and it's become very, very obvious. And you've got other conferences who have stuck to their guns, stuck to their principles, and people are now turning to them for leadership.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing.
Because the SEC or the ACC are big enough to do their own media deals,
Right.
and they're big enough to self-regulate in what they see as being their interest.
Yep.
So the idea here would be, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the SEC would just be like, all right, NCAA, we're out. We're going to take our schools. We are the bigger brand. The NCAA, you are the smaller brand. SEC, we're the bigger brand. And we don't actually care if we can compete in your weird bowl championship series setup.
Correct.
We will run our season. We will play amongst ourselves, and we will have our own tournament and crown our own
it's not
champion.
clear that anyone likes, right? Like, find me a person that likes.
Well, Matt, no one likes it because it's never made sense.
Correct, but that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Like,
So
find me a person that's a proponent of the setup other than maybe the NCAA.
There was a time that bowls were very popular. There was a time that the BCS, even towards the end of its existence, was popular. But
Early '90s, right? Like
decisions
you could get in a cool bowl, and maybe even
Yeah.
even it wasn't the national championship bowl,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you could get in a cool bowl, and that was still a really big deal.
But the
and maybe if
BCS
it didn't even make sense, but it was still interesting.
But even then, the BCS had an issue because it would rotate their championship bowl.
Right.
And so you've had this issue for the last 25, 30 years where the NCAA has been making decisions that have unequally given certain teams the ability to excel far beyond everybody else. It's not leveled the playing field. And what people are seeing is the conferences keeping the playing field relatively equal for everybody.
Yeah.
The NCAA's just fostered this dying system that has completely, bowls are boring. Nobody cares about bowls anymore because it's only the playoffs, right?
Yep.
So yeah, what Joe and what you were saying is we're about to go. Hopefully, in a perfect situation, you'll go to a system to where you've got two major conferences. You've got, the SEC, and you've got maybe the Pac-12 or ACC, whatever survives, or maybe they combine. You've got two super conferences that basically put forth 8 teams or so to play in a like true playoff scenario. And I think this leads to a point of how it is. It is not trying to mimic professional football in America. It is trying to mimic. Matt?
European soccer.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, this is what I think it looks like, right? It looks like European soccer. There is no comparison that I can find in the United States for what college football, specifically this SEC issue, looks like right now. Soccer in Europe just went through this issue a few months ago with the European Super League issue. So for those of you that don't know what this issue was, we actually, I think, talked about it for one episode on the podcast. The top clubs in the English Premier League, in the Spanish League, in the French League, in the Italian League, wanted to break off, and then instead of competing in their own country's leagues each year, where they are always going to have the same 4 or 5 teams that are the top 4 or 5 teams every year, they wanted to go break off and form their own league throughout Europe, where the highest competitive teams throughout the entire continent were just competing amongst themselves constantly. And that is kind of what you're seeing happen with the SEC, right? The SEC wants to take maybe not, all of the highest competitive teams, but certainly take a little bit of, the more competitive teams so that you're not putting, divisions that are completely beneath some of the SEC schools.
Yep.
And break off a super conference that maybe even has more than 2 divisions, right? You could see the SEC ending up with 4 divisions that are more down the road.
There's a leak from over the weekend that's been floating around that I think has 5 or 6 divisions.
Yeah.
An east, a south, a west, a north, a central.
Now, I think the media part here is explaining why this matters in terms of media buying and how I think the decline of TV is actually what's driving this. And it's this. Over, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, just putting a football game on TV got you okay ratings. People are going to watch it. That's why those long tail bowls, Meineke, Car Care Bowl, whatever it is, existed.
Yep.
You could put a football game on TV and advertisers wanted to buy on it. Live sports are the thing keeping over-the-air TV alive right now.
It was also, by the way, back then, pretty much the only way to have your logo on the field or on the screen for the entire game, right? The bowl game was pretty much the only way that was going to happen. That's not the case anymore, but it was then.
So you had great product placement.
Yep.
As the competition for TV is growing, because there's fewer eyeballs watching, but there's still the largest relative pools of audience, the value that networks are willing to pay for it is concentrating more and more and more at the very top brands in each of these, sports.
Yeah.
And so for college football, Alabama or Georgia or Florida or Oklahoma or Texas are now more valuable perhaps on their own than they are inside of a conference where they are consistently getting packaged against teams that are not their peers.
Yeah.
So these waste of scheduling opening games where a big school stomps a small school for the first 3 weeks.
And are rarely on TV.
Yeah.
Correct.
Do not make sense for those schools. It doesn't make sense for the TV networks.
Yep.
And so there's a money issue there that's being driven by TV's need to maintain eyeball pools and only big schools being able to do that.
The SEC has done a phenomenal job of wheeling and dealing with ESPN, the SEC network, in making sure that even the most boring games that are being played week to week in the SEC somehow will get
hyped.
They'll get hyped. And they'll get a better time slot than some of the big marquee games, right? And it comes down to their leverage and their ability to negotiate with ESPN and the SEC network to get it done. And the SEC network, to its credit, has done a great job of fostering the fan base. They do everything right to keep people tuning in week to week.
And that's the biggest important difference, I think, between this and the European Super League is the only reason really that the European Super League got stopped is the fans went crazy.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't want to see them leave the English Premier League and the leagues of their countries because those are things that had, tradition tied
they're
to
tied
them.
to nationality.
Yeah. And they wanted those to stay. I don't know that you have that issue here, right? I don't know that the fan bases are going to cry foul if Texas leaves the Big 12.
Well, Texas, you're seeing some pushback in Texas. I mean, we talked about it the other day. Their legislature, I guess, met in the dark of night on Thursday night or Friday to pass an emergency bill to say that Texas can't lead the Big 12 without congressional approval in Texas. So I mean, you're seeing some pushback, but I mean, at the end of the day, money's going to talk, right? Texas can make exponentially more money by joining the SEC than by staying in the Big 12 and perpetually spending.
And that's going to push back too, right? Because those same kinds of people that got to, whoever in the Texas legislature decided to pull that stunt, those same people are going to realize that the University of Texas has a lot more money to make in the long run by getting that SEC football deal, and that's going to push back the other way.
Here's the other thing no one says about this. And the Big 12 doesn't get your nephew admitted to Texas when he's on the cusp.
Yeah.
The Big 12 doesn't get you tickets to the box when you want to be in the president's box and you're a legislator. The Big 12 does not get you on the field passes when you want to take little Jimmy to meet the quarterback.
Yep.
And that is how universities use athletic programs to build political influence.
Yep.
But do we have anything else to cover on this? I think we got some more
I
stuff.
think
We went
can
pretty
move
deep on it.
Yeah. So let's talk about creators for a minute. And then we can come back to the Olympics and talk about sports.
There's an interesting thing going on with creators right now, which is as there's more platforms where the creators are driving the content, like independent creators.
I mean, creators are having a digital renaissance at the moment for sure.
They've been deleveraged when the only thing out there had been Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah.
They are starting to get more leverage now that, even though Facebook owns Instagram, but Instagram, TikTok, you kind of pick your place, and especially TikTok is putting pressure on those other platforms to help creators better monetize content.
And look, I mean, it's a totally different category, but I mean, OnlyFans is also a creator category, right? Like it's adult entertainment or whatever, but like creators are having across the board a renaissance right now.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to make money by creating some sort of art,
Yeah.
Now's a good time.
now's a good time to do that on the internet.
Because there's competition for it.
Yeah.
Eyeball time is as high as it's ever been. 8-10 hours a day on digital.
It doesn't even have to be complex.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, look
No,
at the
look.
NFT market and the crypto punks.
Yep.
Like they are literally boxes.
Yeah.
There are like 200 boxes like connected together to lightly form the outline of something that looks like a person.
Worth 20 ETH each.
Yeah, and they're going for
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And so this is a new tipping scheme, right? That's been rolled out by YouTube.
Yes, the first one is a new digital tipping option that has been rolled out for YouTube creators. It is called, oh God, what is it called?
That's a terrible
Super
name.
Thanks. No, it's called Super Thanks, which is just as weird a name.
Well, YouTube
Yeah.
has super chats where you can ask a question if you pay money. So super thanks is that
I hate
tip
all
version.
this.
yeah, I mean that doesn't make me feel any better.
Have either of you ever watched? And producer Alex, this is a question for you too. Have you ever watched a video on YouTube and said to yourself, "Man, I wish I could just give them some money right now"?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's been some stuff that I thought was like so like well done and thoughtful, and I know how much work it takes to produce.
I mean, but usually what I've done in those cases is just found whatever that person does.
Yeah.
Now, and occasionally they
click
don't
the
have
link on the
something, right? But like,
profile.
I mean,
Sometimes they're just a creator.
Yeah,
though.
sometimes they just make videos, but usually that person also has a book or a course or something that you can
Yeah.
get. But I mean, I mean, I guess I may just not be in the category of following a lot of people that just create like
Yeah.
content and don't create anything to go along with it.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people I watch are on the other end of that with you. Is like they've already done something,
Yeah.
and like they're just doing this as like a attack on.
Yeah,
to
I mean, I
their
understand if you're like I know that like makeup is a big trend for like content creation.
Yeah.
You probably don't have like something you can buy from that because you probably
Well,
don't have a deal with a
Now,
makeup company.
I think the fast forward on this is we're going through this stage of all the tech companies competing against each other for creators.
Yeah.
And they're making these little bids for like you can get a tip and you can have higher CPMs and like maybe we won't
Look,
monetize you.
YouTube seems to be the only one though that the creators feel like they get a decent value from.
Yeah.
Though, right? Like YouTube seems to be the only one that the creators feel really positive
Mm-hmm.
towards.
But where all this is going is eventually the way content creation is going to be funded is through pay as you consume crypto transactions and NFT offerings on the creative itself, where the creator can issue an NFT against the podcast or against the video, and as that's monetized by people consuming it, the people who paid for that NFT are entitled to something as a result. Maybe they get to ask a question, maybe they get to have an ad on it,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
they get to, have a piece of the revenues, and the NFT allows the creator to get upfront money and then spread out the payments to the supporters on the back end.
Do you think this plays on the psychological component that goes into like you get out of an Uber ride and you get the notification to rate them, and unless it was just the worst car ride of your entire life, you always feel inclined to give them 5 stars because you know it's their livelihood? Like, does this start preying upon that psychological condition as well?
No, it won't be that because people are so conditioned at getting stuff for free. Like only a very small percentage of people are going to tip.
Especially on YouTube.
I don't know. It's just so much easier to spend money like on the internet now. Like you click one
Yeah.
button in Apple Pay and then 99 cents.
But when
goes
was
out
the last
door.
time you spent money in a transaction in Facebook?
Oh, I don't have Facebook.
Yeah,
so-
like none of this really
Right, but like,
starts to
or
work
in
well.
Instagram,
Yeah.
right? Like, and
Oh, I've
Facebook
n-
has
I've-
and Facebook and
yeah.
Instagram have had microtransactions built in for a decade.
not even once.
Yeah, so like I mean I don't know that it depends on if you're in that audience of people that are likely to
Yeah.
to be inclined to do that.
Imagine if Uber implemented this service and you could tip based on just like conversation. So you tipped on the ride and then tipped on the conversation too. Maybe the Uber driver is providing some sort of other creative content while you're on a ride. That's a
I
terrible
got
idea.
nothing. Yeah, no, I got nothing. That's moving on, but also on the subject of creators. So TikTok is, I don't want to say they're trying to keep up. TikTok does a lot for creators, but I mean, YouTube, like I said, is kind of the gold standard. But TikTok announced last week a new advertising product that is called Spark Ads. And so what Spark Ads does, it's a little bit different concept for branded content. And so what it does is it lets you pick previous posts from a creator, right? So stuff that they posted without having a partner in mind or it being a sponsored post, and let you retroactively go back and sponsor it, right? So if there's a viral video, maybe it has nothing to do with your brand or content or anything else, even though it's already out there, you can go back and retroactively
almost like user-generated content is what's going on. Yeah, I think that's smart.
So, I mean, well, let's think about the guy skateboarding with the cranberry juice, right? Like Ocean Spray would then be able to take that and go right back to, to advertise it. Instead of having to create new content around it, they would be able to take the original video and actually push it out as sponsored content. So,
yeah, I think that's great. Now, how many advertisers are going to, you have to be on it like right when it happens, because I don't think too many people are going to go through backlogs.
I mean, it depends on the advertiser. And it depends on the content creator you're looking for. If you're just looking for something that has like a medium level of virality and is somewhat subjectively attached to the product you're trying to sell or the topic you're on, like that is probably a good exchange. You might just go
surf hashtags, something related to your product. When you find someone using it, you spend like $50.
If you're Cheerios and you're just looking for like mid-level influencers that post like funny TikToks about Cheerios, and you go start offering them $150 to like find already generated funny content about Cheerios, right? You don't have to make new stuff. You can already look at it to see if it's brand appropriate. You don't have to wait to approve something new. And you just send these people $150 and say like, hey, can I use this for, the Cheerios page? And they're like, sure. I mean, that is gold from a marketing and advertising standpoint. And it's available, I guess, as of right now in TikTok's ad manager. So get some. It's called Spark Ads.
That's a better name than Super Ads.
Super Thanks.
Super Thanks.
Super
but it's a better name than Super Thanks,
Google will eventually call their ads Super Ads.
Finally.
You have to pay to see those ads.
The Olympics.
Ooh.
Those are happening?
Those are happening.
Oh.
Who in the room has watched any of the Olympics?
There was a little bit on TV when I was at lunch today.
That doesn't count.
Producer Alex
That does not count. Producer Alex raised his hand. Producer Kirsten raised her hand. I have not watched a second of the Olympics. No. Jack is shaking his head.
It's so bad. I'm seeing a little bit of it on social media, but I'm not seeing as much as there would have been in the past. Like, it is not taking up the space like it once did.
No, NBC used to blast Twitter with highlight videos and updates and medal counts, and I'm seeing nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. Other than, like, negative stories, right? Like
Simone Biles dropping out.
So-and-so dropped out of this. So-and-so got COVID.
Not winning a gold medal on the first day.
The beds are uncomfortable because they're cardboard.
I was gonna say, I mean, it's Olympic Village. Was the selling point ever that the beds were going to be super comfortable?
The selling point was that you'd have sex with the other athletes.
That's the whole selling point of Olympic Village, as I understand it.
Yeah, but this year they switched out the beds for cardboard beds. To try
like actually?
Yeah.
They're like
so you couldn't have sex on the beds.
Yeah, they're just like thick cardboard beds.
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah. It's real life.
Specifically to prevent.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh wow.
It's COVID.
Yeah, I missed that story.
Yeah.
Super.
Yeah. This is
2021.
They know the floor is still there, right? Like
they're athletes. Listen.
Yeah.
2021 is kind of like the vindictive follow-up to 2020 in a lot of ways.
Right.
Okay.
I don't see a big Olympic story emerging. Like, I see the Olympics essentially right now. Like,
they're like dumpster diving for interesting stories,
reinforcing the very negative self-image that the United States has about itself currently, and therefore.
Do you want to hear something fun? There's another Olympics in 6 months.
Oh yeah,
because the Winter Olympics are in January, February next year.
Where are they?
China.
Oh well.
Great.
We can pack up and
head over.
It's not the same athletes, so that's a shame. Otherwise, we just pack up and go over to the mainland.
There are a lot of groups already calling for us to boycott the Winter Olympics next year. So.
But I honestly don't see the Olympics as a long-term viable event.
Not like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They need to scale it back down. They need to let it chill for a little bit. It's just such a thing right now with no actual reward for anybody. But like 10 Americans.
Nobody in the stands.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's nobody there. It's very sad.
It's not.
Well, it's just, I mean, usually the Olympics is good for a story, right? It's good for some like come together story or some overcoming adversity story.
But the problem is the whole thing is overcoming adversity.
Yeah, so it doesn't work when you don't have...
You need two
like,
stories.
If it's a macro story, that doesn't work.
Correct.
Because the only thing that's going to work is maybe a documentary that comes out in a couple years about how weird this Olympics was.
You need an underdog. You need the underdog story where the underdog fights through adversity.
Yeah, which,
achieve.
like, maybe if they had let the woman that got kicked out for, using weed, maybe if they had let her come back in, they could have had that story.
But that underdog story is the minor story.
Yeah.
The major story you need in an Olympic competition is you need the arrival of the champion narrative.
And Elton John didn't even come.
Yeah. That this person or this athlete...
Was he supposed to?
No.
Oh.
But you wanted an arrival of a champion.
Yeah. Arrives as a champion, dominates, wins the gold medal. Right now, because of everything being so topsy-turvy, no one, at least for the United States audience, is coming in as a known champion, performing at a championship level, and then winning that gold medal. So,
Michael Phelps is literally commentating the swimming portion this year. That's dystopian.
Now, maybe that will, maybe that narrative will emerge. Maybe there's a sport nobody's paying attention to.
If it hasn't come out at this point, it's not just going to pop out of its head like a prairie dog.
Yeah.
Prairie dog.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's not just, I mean, it's just not going to pop up one day, right? Yeah. Like, if it's not developing its narrative in week 2 of the Olympics, like, it's not coming.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of the good sports are up front this year, right? Like softball, which we were triumphantly returning to because they had to get rid of softball several years ago because we were the only team that ever won. They brought it back this year. I think the gold medal tournament's today. Is today Tuesday?
Today is Tuesday.
And nobody's batting an eyelash, right? Like it should have been a huge deal.
Yeah.
Basketball lost. I think soccer's coming up, so maybe that'll be exciting. But like at this rate, no. There's just nothing. There's no traction. There's zero traction.
And like we said this was coming several weeks ago. Like it was just pretty clear that they weren't able to pre-build the momentum for it. Like in a typical run-up for the Olympics, you have a lot of workup that happens in that summer before. Like the cereal boxes start to change. You're getting your promos in as people are watching TV. The shirts start to go in the department stores.
That's also all dependent on the athletes like buying into the like nationality concept, right? It's dependent on them all getting in their matching tracksuits and waving the flag.
I think
and if they're not willing to do that because like there's division among the athletes and people want to kneel while some stand, like if you can't get all that on the same page,
correct,
that marketing can't happen.
Look, I think there's an underappreciated narrative here about that. Not only were average people kind of crushed by the last year, but the Olympians were crushed by the last year because they had been preparing to compete last year.
Yeah.
Then they had to go into an extended but very limited preparation phase. And so I don't see this as being a winning proposition for any narrative.
Yeah. Well, and the psychological aspect that goes into performing sports at such a high level. I mean, 3 weeks ago, there was a conversation of should this Olympics even still go on?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, Japan was
really hard to feel like there's anybody behind you when there's physically no one there.
When you're not behind you, and then there's nobody there.
And 2, you think that nobody's,
and it's
supporting you back home.
When do advertisers figure out that they need to be leery of big live events at this point? You had a lot of award show failures. The Super Bowl was down. The Olympics is going to be, I think, end up pretty down. Like, when do the advertisers start to demand discounts for these things?
Yesterday.
Or is it just that like, hey, that's not great, but it's the biggest audience available?
Well, do you demand discounts or do you think about how you're going to buy it differently, right? Do you buy multiple slots and just try to be the like, I now own this event, right? Mm-hmm. Do you decide to become the presenting sponsor and know that like maybe the audience is half the size it was last year, but now it's my event, right? Like it's the Pepsi Academy Awards or whatever.
Good point. Mm-hmm.
Wimbledon brought to you by Cheez-Its.
Yeah, like I mean, maybe you just have to change your strategy. I don't know.
Yeah. Anything else on Olympics?
I mean,
no.
I want to love them, but
I do. Yeah, I don't like. It's hard to. They're hard to love right now.
The music, the everything, but it's sad.
They're hard to love.
Yeah.
Final thoughts.
I have nothing additional to share.
All right. Jack?
I want to circle back and just make one more point about the tipping. I feel like I left it on a weird note.
Tip your servers, folks. They're working hard for
and
you
your
tonight.
bartenders.
But-
And your bartenders.
But that's my point. Fox Business had a poll recently, and it was determined that millennials and younger age groups were the worst tippers in
They
America
have the
at
least
moment.
money.
And now YouTube is like, hey, look, another opportunity for you to tip.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, maybe that hesitancy to tip their server, because whatever goes through people's minds to not tip servers, tip your servers. I wonder if that translates over to that, or there's some psychological aspect that says like, oh, well, this is somebody I want to tip because I feel like I'm getting something more from them other than them bringing ice cold Pepsi to my table. So anyways, it's kind of funny that we're the worst tippers, and yet we're being now asked to tip more in different venues and different aspects. So that's all. That's my final thought.
Damn millennials and Gen Zs.
Yeah.
I always want to say X, but it's Z. All right.
All right.
Farewell,
Good.
everyone.
As always, we appreciate you tuning in. If you have a moment, jump in your favorite podcast app of choice, leave a rating or review. It helps more people discover the show. And when more people discover the show, it makes us happy. If you haven't checked out the website at podcastarecord.com lately, go on over and do that. We're putting episode transcripts up now. So if you just want to search everything we said on the episode, you can do that, which is super cool. We're just juicing those search engine results, and we're going to have the episode videos up from this week going forward. So if you want to see our smiling faces in person while we're talking to you, you can check those out on YouTube or at podcastarecord.com. We'll be back next week. See you then.
Wait, what? You got a turtle for Alexander?
The stuffed turtle we got. Yeah.
Trying to, but waiting on your slow ass.
I'm always podcasting.
Here, no, I'll get the door, Joe. Don't worry about it.
I'm running a live podcast stream from my head 24/7. Jeffrey Bezos. How do you know there's only an audience of one? Any way you want it, that's the way you need it.
Any way you want it. That's
The Stingers, Alex. Oh, wait. Can you play them on the Mac?
Test 1 2 3.
Got real Don Imus in the morning vibes with this lighting in here. R.I.P.
Too soon.
Gone,
We hardly knew ye.
gone too soon.
Test 1 2 3.
You had so much misogyny to offer.
CEO entrepreneur, born in 1964. Jeffrey Bezos.
Hello there, people. This is Alex on the mic. Show me what you got.
Hey, what are we talking about?
Fuck if I know.
Oh my god. They sold Martin Shkreli's Wu-Tang Clan album. The government did. Not revealing who the buyer is.
Me.
Dude, if you
Wu-Tang Clan.
if you are they still alive?
Excuse me?
We got to start the podcast.
They have a conference call
peeps.
every Wednesday. It's called Wu-Tang Wednesday. All members still participate. They have to have an excuse if they can't be on the call.